You know, folks, February can be some of the coldest weather of the year here in East Tennessee. But it can also give you some of the best crappie fishing you can have all year long. For some fishermen, February could be one of the top months to catch fish. I love to catch crappie in February. Now, at times, it can be tough, though, this time of year, whether you're fishing out of a boat, whether you're fishing from the bank. It can get tough to locate the crappie this time of year, and particularly if you're new to fishing for crappie or you don't have any really what I call go-to spots for this time of year, it can be really difficult. So if you're having trouble catching crappie, if you're having trouble finding crappie, really is the main thing. Just as a tip that you might check out if you hadn't checked out, but one thing that happens on this lake around here this time of year is that you can find crappie in really shallow water. So the basics of it would be like here on the Tennessee River, the Fort Loudon Lake, Chickamauga Lake, any of these lakes here in Tennessee or Alabama on the Tennessee River. Look back into the coves, get your aerial map out, look at all the different what we call coves. It's really big creeks, the bigger creeks that feed into the lake. Oftentimes these bigger creeks will have even smaller feeder creeks, so you'll have a what you call back in the creek sort of thing. For this lake, it's really just sort of usually winds up being a narrow kind of inlet that opens up into a bigger section of water that's away from the main body of the lake, out of the current. As you call it, the backwaters, the creek, back in the creek, whatever, but it basically turns into a big cove. So if you go back far enough on this lake, a lot of these little feeder creeks turn into nothing but little mud flats. They only go back so far, can't go back that far really. The water gets shallow and they turn into these little mud flats. So yeah, I usually fish afternoons, so I've found crappie back in these shallow flat areas in the back of these creeks in the afternoons on warm sunny days through February. We start to get some warmer days, and those can be prime days. You get a couple of warm days up in the 50s and 60s with good sunshine, and I think what happens is that more shallow water back into those creeks warms up a little bit, all right? So it gets kind of stuff active, bait fish, little aquatic insects, and whatever other miscellaneous living creatures might be back there. So the crappie get back in there, and for some reason they find the water attractive. It's I don't know, maybe the temperature is a little warmer than what it is in other parts of the lake at that time. The lack of current, maybe the fact that could be shad back in there, which there usually will be this time of year, plus other aquatic little insects that they'll feed on, which is probably why these little tiny hair jigs are so effective, because they sure don't look like a shad, but they do look like a little aquatic insect. Now, my preferred method of fishing for crappie is really almost always with a jig and bobber. And so what I do in this situation is I go more shallow than I normally would. In some of my videos you'll see that I've got a fairly deep setup going on there with the jig below the bobber, but in this situation where the water is really, it's not that deep, sometimes only 2 or 3 feet, maybe 4 feet at the most, so you've got to shallow up a little bit, so you really at times maybe even only 1 foot under your float might be deep enough, maybe no more than 2 feet. So that's usually what I shoot for, is somewhere around that 2 foot range under the float, or maybe a little more shallow in those instances where the water is only 2 to 3 feet deep.